Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a fun little card and we're going to start off by doing some stamping. I plan to do some alcohol marker coloring, and so I have some Express It cardstock that I have put into my Mini Misty, and I'm going to use this adorable stamp set by my favorite thing called Tweet Friends, and it was designed by Stacy Yakula. I always get it wrong. But I'm putting down 4 of the images in there, 3 of the little birds and the mushroom, or the bigger mushroom, and then I'm going to ink those up. I'll close the door of my Misty, and then I will ink those up using some Memento Tuxedo black ink. And I have never stamped with these before, so I'm probably going to have to stamp it a couple times just to make sure that I have a good crisp image. And then we'll go on to do our alcohol marker coloring. I'm using the Arteza EverBlend alcohol markers. I have the set of 60. Last week I had showed you a haul video. They had sent me the markers for me to give a try, and so I did a little mini video on those, and now I'm actually just really going to town coloring some images with these. I have the colors up on the screen for you, and I kind of did some blending ahead of time, and I showed that in the last video. And so that way I kind of had some colors that I knew would work together. I will say that it is a bit of a learning curve going from Copic markers with a brush nib to using a bullet nib. And I like the bullet nib, but I don't know if I am super fond of using it for like a big open area. It works beautifully for these adorable little birds. I had no problem doing any blending. And so I'm going to just keep coloring. And if you're having a hard time getting blending, because I have read that before, that people have had a little bit of a hard time blending these out, I would say some tips that you could use would be to start with your lighter color, which is what I always do, honestly. I have colored with alcohol markers for probably a decade now, and I still do lightest to darkest. That is just what works best for me. I know everybody is different, but that is what works best for me. I feel as though when I put down my lightest color first, that I'm getting a good base down, and then I can start working my way up with my mid-tone and then my darkest color. So here I'm putting my mid-tone down, and then I'll go in with my darker shade and just put little bits in. Another reason why I start lightest to darkest is that I have found that when I go darkest to lightest, I tend to use too much of the darker color. I will put down way too much and make my shadows way too big. And when I do it this way, I found that I'm just not using or putting down as much. So my shadows are a little bit smaller, which is, for me, what I have found, my tastes, I like that a little bit better. So if you're having a hard time blending, I would say start lightest to darkest and practice that. Practice. I've done this for a decade, and I still just have to go lightest to darkest. The more I use these markers, the more I'm finding that I really do enjoy them. And I really do like the bullet nib. I've said that before. I said that in the last video. I like bullet nibs. If I could get rid of the chisel nib on my Copics and replace it with all bullet nibs, I would, but I do really like the bullet nib. It works beautifully for smaller areas, and so the more I use it, the more I use these EverBlends, I am really enjoying these. I will say, if you are in the market to purchase alcohol markers, these are a great starter, or possibly just could be a great set in general. I would actually, if I could do it over again, I would personally like to purchase the 120 count. This is just the 60 count that I have. Studying the colors that it has, the 120 as compared to the 60, I mean, obviously you're getting double the amount of markers, so it's I think it's for the value, it's a much better value. I'm just going in with a gray, it's more of a cool gray color. So I'm going in with a gray, just adding some shadowing around the birds. Now is where I'm just putting in some of my finishing touches there. And then for their little beaks, I do add 2 colors. I don't go with 3 colors because that's just too small of an image, but I do use 2 colors. Yep, and so now I'm moving on to the mushroom. Now this is what I was talking about as far as using a bullet nib on a bigger area. I found that I definitely, because it's an alcohol marker, you have to just keep moving. You have to move quickly, and you have to kind of stay around in your area. And I bet if I did circular motions, I wouldn't have so many brush strokes. But that's what I was talking about as far as a bigger area. That's where I need a lot more practice using the bullet nib, because I don't like all the brush strokes showing. That would be my one issue with the bullet nib. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying it. And like I said, I'll just keep using it. I'll just keep practicing with it. It's like any medium. If you want to get better at something, you just have to keep using it and keep practicing with it. I'm moving on to the little flower, the purple flower. And then I think I'll be done coloring. No, this is where I grab the colorless blender, which is basically not necessarily an eraser. What it does, like with the other alcohol markers, is it will push the color back in. So that's what I was doing. Moving on now, I will fussy cut each of these images out because I do not have the coordinating die. But, of course, My Favorite Things does have the coordinating die to go with this, so I will have everything that I've used linked down below. And I'll even have the Arteza markers, and I have a 10% off coupon that is good just until the end of this month, I think. I should check that. It might be good till the 30th, but it's for 10% off all your purchases in the Arteza store. Now I'm going to get ready to start actually assembling my card, or getting the parts of my card ready to go. I have cut out a square using the My Favorite Things Wonky square die. And I also used the My Favorite Things Blueprints number 24. That one is not available anymore, but I'll have something linked down below that would be the same. I am just blending on some bundled sage at the bottom of my square there using a VIVACE beauty brush. And now I'm going to stamp my sentiment, so I've put that into my Mini Misty once again. And then I'll ink that up with that Memento Tuxedo black ink. And it's funny because this wasn't even the sentiment that I originally had wanted to choose. I just grabbed one. I thought I was grabbing a different one, but I ended up really liking that sentiment. I will tape down, because I wanted the stitching to be on the edge of my sentiment. I wanted it so bad on there. So I will tape that down to the board, and that way I can trim it out, and there will be the stitch line on both ends. So it will be very cohesive with my square on the back. And that pattern paper that I used was actually the My Favorite Things Tiny Hearts Pastel. I don't know if that's still available, but if it is, I will have that link down below as well. I'm using some liquid glue to put down my panel onto my card base, which is just some heavyweight white cardstock that I have in my stash. And then I'm going to kind of put my images down because I want to see where those are going to be. As you can tell, I've already put some foam tape all over the back of those, but I want some musical notes to be stamped in that background so it looks like he's actually singing to her. So I'm inking those up once again with Memento Tuxedo black ink. And then I'm going to stamp out the little note. Is that an eighth note? It's been a while since I've taken music class. A couple times. And then that'll be ready to go. And then I decide on the inside, I'm going to put my third little bird in there because he just wouldn't fit on the outside. And then I'll stamp the musical notes around him. And then I'm also going to stamp one more sentiment. This is the original sentiment I wanted to use for the front of my card. You put a song in my heart. But hey, it works. They all work, so it's good. Now I'll just use my liquid glue to adhere down my third little bird on the inside. I'm really enjoying decorating the insides of my cards now. I don't always do it. As you can see, I had ink on my hand and I ended up getting it right above his eye. And I searched for probably 10 minutes looking for my mono sand eraser in the move. I thought I lost it. It's one of those things you don't use all the time, but when you need it, you need it. So get one if you don't have one, because that'll kind of erase your ink marks if you have some. And then I'll use that same liquid glue to adhere down my square to the front of my card. And then I will peel off all the backing paper from my foam tape. And then I'm going to adhere all those little pieces down to the front. That foam tape that I have, I actually believe that was some Stampin' Up! Foam tape. And it's only a 1/16 of an inch thick, so it's very thin. So it doesn't give too much crazy dimension. But it's good. And then I will peel off the rest and adhere all the, add a little bit of glue to her feet, and then I'll adhere that piece down as well. Then I'm going to move on to taking the glue and putting that on the back of my sentiment, and then I'm going to adhere that down to the front, and then that is actually going to finish off this card. I love how this one turned out. So if you like this card and you've liked this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.